Yes, so we have been talking about the political parties and their assignment. What about us, the electorate? We have a role to play in all of this as well. How many of us are actually aware of what we're supposed to do on election day?
If I can probe that a little further, we'll probably speak to our guests on it, but the first line of voters are the delegates. And the voters as well. Well,
they are voters, but they are voters. They are voters of a different caliber.
Okay, I'll leave it at
a different caliber. We're talking about us now, the voters out there who are going to vote on election day.
They're voters as well. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Wale Ogunade, Voters Awareness Initiative, and he's the president, actually, of the Voters Awareness Initiative. Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for coming. We also have Samson Itodo, who is Executive Director, Yaga Africa.
Always a delight to be here. Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming. Now, let me start with you, Mr. Ogunade, since you claim that you are dealing with voters' awareness, and what we're talking about today really is voters' awareness. First of all, before I ask you what your initiative is doing about making the voters aware of what they're supposed to do, do you think the political parties are doing enough? Then, do you think the government is doing enough to make us aware of our duties?
They are not doing anything.
Oh, forget enough, huh?
They are not doing anything. There is an organization called the National Orientation Agency.
Are you talking about the parties or
No, I'm
government?
going somewhere, man. I'm going to the government and parties and politicians. Yes. The National Orientation Agency has gone to sleep. One will expect by now. For even if it's just on the surface, bringing advice to you so that you blow it out for people to see, assuming that they can't get to the nook and crannies of Nigeria, they can, through you, this organization, get across through adverts, showcase, maybe getting in touch with the Nollywood people, doing a short movie that will, the importance of voting, taking part in the electoral process. Let's leave that one. The politicians, they need their vote. I like the way you brought it in when Ayo was trying to bring it down. What did you call the type of voters now? Preferred voters.
A different kind.
Those voters. This one are those who are really compensated for their work. These own voters are the one that has to bring in the right people in government. So most of us have the opportunity of traveling outside this country, and we have seen what voters have done in helping. Before we go too far, Ghana, the Ghanaians, about 30, 35 years ago, they were here in this country. They are hewers of food and drawers of water for us. But how did they got it right? Politically, through their votes, they partook. Nigeria can get it better because I've been opportune to travel around Nigeria and some parts of this world. And I know Nigeria is the best country. You go to Jos, you are amazed at how Jos is, the weather there. You go to rivers, not to talk of Abuja, not to talk of Lagos here, and every part and any local government in Nigeria has a mineral that should be developed for the betterment of its people. Let's leave that one again. Then the most thing is that how do we galvanize the people? Government is not doing anything because to them it is the few, the better. So as that the number of people who are involved in the electoral process are so insignificant so that they will be able to top the table. You see on election day, an average polling unit has maybe 250. At the end of the day, maybe just 20, 40 or 50 come there to vote. The remaining are pumped up. But thank God for the various ways in which INEC now has been using beavers and technology to see that rigging has been brought down. Then to the main issue, are they involved? No. They don't want, people like us, we go to the political parties that, look, set up a political or a voter awareness department to encourage people. You don't see anything. The elections are now Ekiti. I just came back from Ekiti some few weeks ago. There is nothing on ground. Or the only thing you see are just posters, even splashes of posters all over. No campaign, nothing. With election coming around the corner, they say they are doing door to door. Door to door to who? To who? So if the political parties don't campaign, obviously they are talking to their very few club of people, and at the end of the day, you see that those minutes are the thing, and at the end of the day, you have a government that does not represent the people, like I normally see. What always have in this country is a minority government.
Okay.
There are more than 20, sorry, let me bury it.
Okay.
Let me learn very well. There are more than 120 million Nigerians, and you find that the total number of those who vote in Nigeria are less than 40 million. The totality.
Well, that's an issue that, we even now we need to get, that very, very clearly. But I know that Mr. Ogunade does not want to speak to this special kind of voters. But maybe you can speak to it, Mr. Itodo. Because ultimately, even the delegates themselves, they will vote on they should vote on election day, right? So they have two jobs to do essentially. And I'm bringing it in because, it's like a selection process so that people can pick the better of very few candidates as opposed to having to choose like from 100, of candidates, people who want to be, in elective posts. So what should we be telling the delegates? We did our bit to speak to the delegates,
Not as if it
APC.
matters.
Well, okay, come on, please, at least. Because
how did you describe the exercise earlier?
It's not me, it's Professor
Bismarck Rwanda, yes.
Delegates procurement process. But so what kind of thing should we be saying to this special kind of electors, if I can use that term, before they eventually, when they select these people to us that I think we're going to have to select from.
They're going to hand over to us to pick from.
Well, I think that Channels has done a very good job in raising the salience of the character of the delegates and how they should, exercise this power vested in them to select or nominate candidates within the political parties. What is central is political parties are platforms for the aggregation of social interest. But more importantly, one of the most important functions of political parties is to recruit leaders and nominate leaders. That recruitment process has to be defined by certain values. As a country, we have failed in properly articulating what are the credentials for holding public office. And I'm not speaking to provisions in the Constitution with respect to age, with respect to educational qualification, or the disqualification criteria that we have in our laws.
But even the Constitution, my apologies, speaks to values.
Yes, it does speak to values, but the Constitution remains its letters in a book if it is not extracted and it's not reflected in the decisions and the way that we operate. And so when you have a predatory political class, when they have opportunities to elect or nominate leaders, they ignore those values because for them, political power and the retention of political power is to either fight inter-elite wars or for primitive accumulation of wealth and not service to the people. Yeah. So the entire candidate nomination process is severely compromised, highly commercialized, and so it becomes very difficult for the kind of leaders that we want to emerge. And so what should the message, to the delegates be? First, the delegates need to understand the implications of candidate nomination, that they are actually the ones who will provide the vast majority of voters the options for which we should vote for. If they don't nominate credible, competent and capable people, the choice that voters make on February 25th and March 11th is already compromised. So to prevent that compromise, their voting or nomination of candidates should be informed by those values that you talk about. Secondly, the future of this country is actually in the hands of the delegates. And we're very excited as monitors of this electoral process that we're having this conversation now in this form and in this manner. In 2019, there were mere tangential conversations held in silos. But now it appears that the entire nation has woken up to the fact that, hey, if delegates nominate criminals, we will be stuck with criminals.
Thank you.
If delegates nominate incompetent people, we will be stuck with incompetent people for the next 5 years. So we should lower our expectations, from any political leadership that emerges from the primaries. Therefore, for parties who are yet to conduct their primaries, it is important that the delegates note that, one, they have to uphold those values that Nigerians and our constitution really holds dear. And it's the values of integrity, the values of patriotism, that when politicians dole out funds to you to buy your votes as a delegate, regardless of what you do afterwards, you are actually compromising and undermining the process. And it's no longer democracy, because what you have is outcome that is purchased and not outcome that enjoys what? The legitimacy. The legitimacy, and democracy is actually big on the concept of legitimacy. And so whether your party nominates a candidate, that comes out of a very commercialized process where delegates are procured, the outcome cannot enjoy popular support.
Perhaps that also speaks to the fact that, to one of the reasons, Mr. Ogunade, why we have had increasingly decreasing voter participation.
Yes. My brother has laid the ropes. He has finished the world. There's what we call end of discussion. That's just it. He has laid everything there. Why would people now be interested in elections when there's nothing the government is giving out? I told you I just came back from Ekiti. Yesterday I was in Abeokuta. I'm sure you know the Abeokuta-Ishun road. The place is just a vast forest this side, vast forest this side, left and right. And then if it's in America, you see farmland being worked on, farmland being worked all over the other plats. But government is not doing anything. I even have a friend who is in charge of one big agency in Ogun State. I went and see him and said, you can set up something. He said, that's not the vision of the governor. And that's all. That's not the vision of the governor. That's all. And he kept quiet. So how will people be encouraged, in fact, involved in it? But they must be involved, because that's the only way we can change. Okay. They can only change through now removing those who have not performed and putting in those who will work. And of course, what my brother has said, the delegates too, they don't just jump on people. The delegates too are a product of the system. The delegates too bribe their way in to become delegates. It's a terrible thing that we have here. So for us to know if a delegate wants to bribe you, then definitely, because I was reading it, I don't know, maybe you saw it. A delegate who was given money came to his constituency to now share the money that he was given from the delegate conference. So it's as bad as that. So we need a new reorientation. That's what I was telling my brother before we came on air. We can't continue like this. Okay, I'm 60 now, and I've been hearing Mambila when I was a primary school boy. Mambila has not come up. So where do we go?
I don't know for how long you heard Ajaokuta before it came on.
Ajaokuta was there 30 years ago.
No, Ajaokuta must have been since the 80s.
That's what I'm saying.
The question that I wanted to ask you, because I'm still coming back to Mr. Itodo, is this. So the issue that you said he has already, quote-unquote, finished work, as we say on the street. Now, so what then are the options? There is a large population of people who do not vote. Good. We had an interview with Mr. Festus Okoye, yes, the INEC National Commissioner once, during the Abuja elections. And he said, historically, from their data, a sizable number of urban Abuja did not vote. Yes. It's only the rural areas that voted. Now, that could probably be said of most parts of Nigeria as well. Yes. So, and these people who, as he said, do not vote are perhaps the well-educated ones who know and who are able to sift, okay, does this person have what I need for a governor or a chairman or president or whatever it is? If that person, if none of the options open does not have it, then they will just say, okay, how can I be choosing between the devil and Judas? So what then are the options for the electorate who are now, quote-unquote, boxed into making either of these choices that they are not completely satisfied with?
Increase awareness. we are going to top up the game, because we want the 2023 election to be far, far different from other elections. And we want to harvest those who are not interested. I'm a pastor, apart from being a lawyer. And what we'll do is that we want to follow up, we want to evangelize the gospel according to governance, good governance. You see, the school point defines democracy as the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we're going to meet people. As I'm talking to you now, I know there's a field in your neighborhood here. If you go there now, you see people playing football. In my neighborhood, do their field. And generally, elections too occurs on a day like this. And you see some people, rather than go to vote, particularly these are youths. And in conjunction with this, my brother here, the promoter of this, not young to rule, not too young to run. So we're going to ensure that these youths, we harvest them. They're careless on election day. And it's a shame that they say the future belongs to the youth. And the youth are not interested in the future. Then we must let them be interested in the future. They must partake in it. So all these things that you are saying, they are things that are on the table. We are working on it to ensure that indeed, this time around, it's not going to be business as usual, where you see old people voting and the young staying back. The youth will be galvanized this time around.
Mr. Ogunade.
Yes, ma'am.
To get the youth to come out to vote, you've got to give them something that excites them.
Yes.
Persons that excite them.
Yes.
Persons that they believe in.
Yes.
Are you sure that this is the kind of result that's going to come out of all these conventions that are going on?
There are 18 political parties. There's only 2 or 3 or 4 that are so visible and strong. I told you I just came back from Ondo. Ikiti. Only 2 were there before. Some other political parties now, because some big characters have joined them, they are now alive there. That's what we are going to do. We are going to encourage young people to join platforms that are ordinary unknown. They'll begin to work on it and begin to drum it and begin to do advocacy. And before we know it, it will pick up.
Okay. Mr. Itodo, do you think that we have come to a place now where Nigerians will vote for personalities and not parties? Because some persons are coming forward who don't belong to any of the big parties. Some credible people are coming out that don't belong to any big parties. Do you think they have a chance?
I think what you've just asked is you've thrown a banana peel.
So you've got to be careful not to sleep on it.
But before I respond to that, I think the point you made about young people and whether they consider this exciting, I think is a strong point. And the reason why I have to speak to this is the fact that 51% of registered voters are young people. However, it is appalling that young people are not showing up, to cast their vote at elections. In the 2019 elections, for the presidential elections, only 28% of young people showed up to vote in the presidential elections for 2019. The governorship elections was about 29%. So of the 29 million people that voted in 2019, only 12 million young people came out. That's abysmally poor. And so young people need to make their numbers count, because the next election is really about young people. Look at the stats for the turnout for voter registration. 78% of those who are showing up to register are young people. So the only way to make their numbers count, is to come out to vote. And you talk about whether the options the parties are presenting, are exciting. And my response is, let's not run, this risk of focusing on the presidential elections alone. That political parties, 18 political parties, they are making nominations to a tune of about 1,500. Because there are 993 state constituencies. There's 360 House of Reps, 109 senators. There are about 28 governorship elections, and then the presidential. If you don't find the presidential exciting, just check down the line. Look at your constituency, the closest person next to you, that's your state house of assembly. You will find someone that is exciting.
But Mr. Itodo, you know that people feel that these people don't go there to represent them.
But it is
that they are representing
duty.
themselves.
No, we need to make a distinction with what is ideal and what is real. We, as a people, we have the power to redefine that reality. And if we didn't have the power to redefine the reality, then the fact that citizens spoke last year or early this year that the National Assembly should return electronic transmission of results into the bill, should retain the power of INEC to review results declared under duress.
And it came to be.
And it came to be. So we are making progress. So we've got to redefine that reality and not accept this as our reality. We have to redefine it. And so young people need to come out. You know, we're just talking and say next week, when you're making voter participation exciting, you know, using music, using art to reach young people. Next week there will be a concert, you know, here in Lagos. You have over 25,000 young people, and INEC is working on this together with the European Union. And INEC is setting up 30 voter registration points at TBS Square here in Lagos from Monday to Saturday next week. And people who are having challenges to come with registration, particularly young people, should show up, you know, at TBS Square for Monday, and INEC is registering voters. So there's a lot of effort, you know, through the Youth Vote Count concerts to get young people to vote. But the point that you make, and I say this, that I think for too long, Nigerians vote for individuals. They don't necessarily vote for the political parties.
Are you sure, Samson?
Yes.
Don't forget that the political parties are hanging around to hand over some little, you know, little things.
It's not really the political parties.
It's the individual.
It's the individuals within it. If you study the entire structure of political financing, and this is why in the current act, you know, the act has made clear distinctions about the role of party candidates as well as the role of political parties. If you check the entire campaign infrastructure, this is why you have parties. When candidates emerge, they set up their campaign council, and then the party also has its own structure. And it's the campaign council that runs, you know, the campaign. So to an extent, people vote for individuals as opposed to the political parties. It's just that you have two parties that have dominated the scene, and those parties, you know, define their leadership selection process based on the two dominant cleavages that shape political competition in Nigeria. One is ethnicity, the second is religion. But if you look at the trends and what's happening within the political parties, it appears they are actually trying to revisit and review that political compact or settlement that has always existed around power sharing within the different regions. We don't know why they are shifting, you know, grounds on this compact, but it appears the political realities of today is forcing them to actually rethink that. But, but my final point on this is Nigerians are beginning to ask questions, and we must, you know, commend the Nigerian people and inspire them the more. This conversation we're having, though we used to have them in 2015 and 2019, but it increased in 2023.
Perhaps there is a need, Mr. Itodo, to conscientize the Nigerian as to their function post-election. Because maybe that, and I'm sure Mr. Ogunade will want to speak to that as well, because most of the time people think that once we have voted, our job is done. And as a result of that, once our job is done after elections, okay, whatever we take,
Yeah.
And then we are now at the mercy of whoever for whatever. Perhaps there is a need to tell us, after voting this person, and the person is not doing what we expect him to, we're not getting enough values from this fellow.
What do we do?
We're down to either the devil or the deep blue sea, and neither is going to give us what we want. Are the electorates hopeless after that? What else do they have as a power to ensure that this devil or this deep blue sea give us something, even if they do not seem to have the capacity?
I think we've always had this discussion about rethinking voter education and whether what Nigerians need is more political education as opposed to voter education, because they are quite distinct. Voter education focuses more on your rights and then the procedural considerations in enforcing that right. So things like this information on timelines for elections, how to register, how to vote, the voting time. That's what voter education tends to do. It provides you information. But political education goes beyond providing you this sort of information to moral education, that this is why you're voting. This is how you should determine who should vote. I think we need,
I think we need both.
So we should, you know, teach people, you know, how to elect better leaders across board, and not just at the at the presidential level.
Yeah.
The second, you know, sort of strategy is often we focus on people who vote traditionally. So we are focusing on the very people who will always vote. So whether you educate them or you don't educate them, voting is already part of their life. But we don't focus on the first-time voters and try to mobilize them and make them understand, you know, the need and why they're actually voting and who they should vote for. But the political parties have been complicit, because political parties should engage in political mobilization. They don't do any of that. We started seeing a fragment of it with the online registration. And I was excited, you know, to see political parties set up registration points for people to get registered. We don't know whether those 43% invalid and double registrants that INEC announced was as a result of that, but it could be one of the reasons. But also the government institutions. You know, in 2011, INEC did set up what is called the NIPVEB. It's the Interagency Committee on Voter Education and Publicity. It had all the heads of media organizations, BON, it had NOA, and then it also had INEC to do what? To contribute to voter education. I think that failed. It didn't fully take off for very obvious reasons, but I'd say that both political parties, both our religious institutions, and, you know, the media are doing a fantastic job, and civil society have a role. And it shouldn't just be the role of INEC, you know, to engage in voter education. Unfortunately, the law vests that responsibility on them, and it's not legally a shared responsibility. And I think that moving forward, we just need to consolidate on what's existing.
Well, I wonder what the National Orientation Agency is doing on that one. But the question that I'm going to ask you the same question, Mr. Ogunade. Is the voter's job done after voting?
It's not done after voting.
Is the voter's job done after the elections have taken place and these individuals have taken?
No.
Okay.
That's what my brother was saying some few seconds ago about political education. We have not gotten to that level, but again, just as we have said earlier, we're moving. The process we are is democracy at work. And of course, we are working on it. It's progressive. You agree with me that this is not how it was 1919 when we started this march. Now it has gone further. And what we are going now is that indeed we will ensure that all these people who have given us, who want to come in, eventually we will have all their manifesto and we'll begin to work on them, put them side by side what they have done. And if they are failing, we will set up, there are sections in the Constitution, section 69 is there, and 103. It talks about recall. The first thing is that we'll deal with those who are the lawmakers, and we'll begin to put pressure on the lawmakers. Then, of course, they will now begin to put pressure on the election, on the presidency or the governor. You know, we can't deal with the governor or the president directly in terms of impeachment. We will see all these things working. Do you know was a victim, or almost a victim some time ago, if you remember? He was about to be recalled. And we're going to work it this time around and ensure that it works. Then we must put them, they must be accountable. There was a day, one of my friends is a lawmaker. He said what the people do is that they give them a blank check. Once they get into office, that's all. Rather than now working on them to serve them, they will be going there cap in hands. Please, we need your help. Peace, we need your help. And this one will be doling out. Rather than making them to work for what they went there to do. They are servants for your information. They are not the king.
Two things on that.
They are there to serve the interest of the people.
So, well, the two things on that very quickly.
Yes.
Well, this first part.
I'm not done with.
Yeah, I know, because you know this thing that you just said about the functions of you know, the voters and all that. You know, clearly they don't even know the rights that they have.
That's why he's going, and that's why we are here, and that's why we'll be there for them. We have to teach them, because some of them don't know all the tenets of democracy. They just know that after they have given them some dough, because obviously some of the, of course, money goes exchange hands too during the actual voting, not the delegates now, the actual voting too. Money change hands, and to them that's their own. They have gotten part of have their own national cake, and that's all. They go to sleep, and they see that there are roads. I go to some places, I say, you don't have roads in this place, you don't have dispensary, not to a health center, dispensary, they don't have it. In the north, I lived in Samaru Zaria. When I was a small boy, there was a dispensary there. The university town of Amadu Bello. There was a dispensary there. You don't have dispensaries anywhere. I went to my former school, All Saints Primary School, Samaru. The place is another thing entirely. It is the students sit on the ground to learn in this day and age, and they say they have a government, and there are people who are there who ought to call government to order. If education is not working, then and health system is not working, what are we doing?
Now, this locality that you talked about, perhaps one of the issues that we have had over time is we
continue to mention. I know. The 774 local governments.
There are those who would wonder how come you talked about 774 local governments now. Perhaps that's where the problem is. When Samson was speaking the other time, he spoke about the governments closer to the people, and he talked about the houses of assembly. As at this moment, that would seem like that's the lowest. But meanwhile, we have a lower tier of government, which are the local governments. So you just talked about that one now, and one is wondering if the government of the state is not valuing or even referencing the importance of the local government's system. Are the people lost?
No, the people just are ignorant. That's just the problem. And those who run government cash on the ignorance of the people. The only way out is education. The Bible tells me, knowledge is power. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Once you know that, this is my right, nobody can roughshod over you.
Okay. Mr. Itodo, that lower level of governance, well, we may not be speaking to it as much today because we're still struggling with local government autonomy or not. Do you see any role for championing that cause in the process as we angle towards local government autonomy to be validated or ratified by the states? Do you see any role for that campaign or championing of that in this process that we are on right now?
Absolutely. The best school for democracy and democratic practice is a local government. And as a country, we need to accept and acknowledge that fact. And if it's so important for us, if we pride ourselves as a constitutional democracy, then things like our constitution, things like political mobilization, right, will be more pervasive. Secondly, INEC has offices in all the local governments. NOA has offices in all the 774 local governments. What kind of political education are these institutions, advancing to raise the consciousness of people? Because I think that, and we should celebrate the Nigerian people, quite frankly, because the resilience that they've demonstrated is a function of consciousness. And it's consciousness of the fact that they belong to a nation that ideally should care about their welfare, and where government has failed in its primary responsibility to provide for the welfare and the security of the people under a social contract, then government needs to face the consequences. And the opportunity is to vote, in the next election. If you've got leaders that have not performed, you have an opportunity to fire them through the ballot, not through bullets. The third point is the fact that you've got a state that wants to retain political power at all costs at the expense of the people. Therefore, governors, have taken a position that in a federation you only have two units, the central and the state, and you don't have the local government. Why? Because it's about the struggle for political power. So power and the people need to understand that they have the power. They need to participate at that level. It's good to look at the presidential elections, no doubt. It's good to look at the National Assembly. But every Nigerian is represented by councillors in your district. You're represented by a chairman of your local government where local government elections are conducted, by a member of your state house of assembly, by a member in the federal house, by a senator, by your governor, by your president. So you have 7 people representing you. And so don't just focus on one.
You forget the deputies. Making 10.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So 10 staff.
I'm sorry, guys. This is where we have to leave it. I mean, this discussion was just getting more and more interesting, and it's only just started because we still have time for this voter education that we're talking about. Both in educating the special voters and educating us,
the general voters,
the Joe Blogs who are going to vote, at various levels for our House of Rep, how the senators and our governor and all that. There's still time for that. So you all still have time to educate, or should I say, we all still have time to educate the people.
Yeah.
But please, guys, don't forget, in order to vote, you need to go and get your permanent voter's card, your PVC. And you can start the process by actually registering online.
cvr.inecnigeria.org.
Now, actually, the online registration has stopped. So if you it stopped on the 30th, a few days ago. So if you want to register, go to the INEC local government office to register. And then if you're in Lagos, you can go to Tafawa Balewa Square from tomorrow. No, from Monday. From Monday 6th to 11th to register, because there will be, like I said, 30 registration points at TBS Square to register voters.
So what about those who want to change something on their voters' cards or want to change? Because they have relocated, they can also go to TBS.
So that you can do online. You can also do that on at TBS Square, or
from Monday. Between Monday and
11th.
Saturday,
yes.
Between Monday and Saturday.
Yes, on Saturday.
Okay, thank you very much.
Also go to the local government offices.
INEC local government office.
Okay.
And in case you forgot whether or not you voted, go to voter.inecnigeria.org. Okay, I understand it's been extended. Is there an extension indeed?
For the
online?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. There's not been any.
Anyway, the information I'm sure
is... Well, if there is, I was able to do mine online, so I'm just waiting for an email now for when I should go and collect my information. I have a PVC already. It's just that I relocated.
Okay.
So I want my... voters, my booth near my house.
Okay.
Mr. Samson Itodo, Executive Director, IAGA Africa.
Thanks so much for having me.
And Mr. Wale Ogunade, President, Voters Awareness Initiative. Thank you both for coming to enlighten us this morning.
To God be the glory.
Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Make sure you join us.